I have gone so far off the rails that I can't even see where I'm supposed to be going. So my point here is sometimes life shakes us and says, you're going the wrong way. And one of my favorite movies is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Has anybody seen that? All right, so John Candy, right? He gets on the highway with Steve Martin, and he's going down the ramp the wrong way. And then he's going down the highway, the freeway. And there's a guy going parallel with him, and he's yelling at him, "You're going the wrong way." And John Candy, just like me, and you're going, and finally, he's like, "What?" And "You're going the wrong way." And here come the trucks, and they barely miss him. So for me, it's like in life, when we go off on that branch, it's, for a more gentle experience in life, listen before things start screaming at us, "You're going the wrong way." Does that make any sense? Yeah. So Carl Jung said, "Thoroughly unprepared, we take the step into the afternoon of life. Worse still, we take this step without the false assumption that our truths and ideals will serve us. But we cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning. For what was great in the morning will be little at evening, and what in the morning was true will at evening be a lie." Wow. So what I think he's saying there is what was true for me as a 23-year-old, as an engineer, is totally a lie for me now. So the truth is dynamic, and it's important for us each to start listening to that. And if I insisted on living a programmatic life just from my head and ignore this thing that pulls to me, this creative, dynamic energy that we're talking about, it would be a programmatic life. And I would cut myself off from the dynamic nature of living a full life. Perfect example of this is George Lucas studied Carl Jung, studied him, and then took his stuff and adapted a movie called Star Wars. And he thought he'd embody what would it look like if somebody lived a programmatic, robotic life. Perfect. Darth Vader, literally a machine, a manned machine. And then what would it look like for someone who had to choose between living the programmatic life versus the life of the heart, life of listening to that energy. And George Lucas, of course, called it the Force, but it's actually what he's referring to is this divine energy, this creative energy that propels life. And what are you going to listen to? What are we each going to listen to in our life? So the good news is that this divine energy, this guidance, this wisdom, this intuition, it's always going to be there for you. Even if you make a million mistakes, you fall down here, it's there for you. You fall down there, it's there for you. You can't lose it. It's always going to be there for you. Absolutely. Isn't that a great thought? The bad news is it doesn't care what we think. I know that sounds terrible, but it's true. Isn't that terrible? Wait a minute. It doesn't care what our egos think. It doesn't care what our programmatic agenda is. It just does not care. Has anybody noticed this? Yeah. So I've had wonderful ideas, great plans, and friends are laughing here. So if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right? So what I would recommend to listen sooner is to surrender sooner, to relate to this divine energy. Now, I've lived in Minnesota. Here's a perfect example. I've lived in Minnesota for 20 years. 20 years. Love Minnesota. But every once in a while, in the winter, about end of February, I start getting, as my friend Catherine would say, "Mike, you're getting that look in your eye, and you're about to sell a house, move to some other, place." I just willfully, in the winter, and I have actually done it. I've moved to Seattle for 2 years, and I get there, and there's no energy there, and I'm like, but this was a great idea, and I sold all my friends and family on it, and the energy wanted me back in Minnesota. So then I tried again in San Diego, then I tried it again in Charleston, and each time I'm coming back sooner. But my point here is we can have all the greatest ideas in the world, but if we're not aligned with that dynamic, creative energy, nothing will work very well. Nothing will work very well. So the question is, who are we listening to? And for me, not to mix metaphors here, the perfect example for this for me is all my life it has felt like I've been swimming hard. I get these great ideas, even altruistic ideas, and I'm swimming hard. And I never noticed until, in the last 5-10 years is as I've slowed down and surrendered and tried to align myself more with this energy, I've noticed there's a wave that's right behind me. And it's been there the entire time. And I've been just paddling in front of it, working so hard. And now I don't paddle quite as hard. And I've slipped up more to be in line with the wave. Now, it doesn't mean we don't have to paddle. We have to paddle. We have to do our part. But it's more in an alignment with a dance with this wave. And then you flow with the wave. And then life is easy. Much easier. It's always, there's always issues. But it's much more of a flow and much more of a dance by surrendering that. And the thing about it is it takes a lot of humility in regards to, it doesn't really care about our agenda. It cares about our alignment with it. And of course, there's more joy there. So the question is, who are we listening to? Some of us are listening to people that aren't even alive anymore. Why are we doing what we do? Why do we do what we do? And who are we listening to? So are you listening to your energy? Are you listening to that joy, that intuition, that inkling that says go this way, that still small voice? Or are you listening to your family and friends who inspire you? And when you leave their presence, you feel more energized. Are those the people you're listening to? Or, on the other hand, are you listening to your ego and its agenda? Our crazy culture has a lot of messages for us, advertisers. And then there's those other family and friends that are fear-based and bring our energy down. So the question is, who are you listening to and who will you choose to listen to going forward? Natalie Merchant has a wonderful song called Life is Sweet. And it says, your daddy, he's the Iron Man, a battleship wrecked on dry land. Your mama, she's a bitter bride, she'll never be satisfied. They told you life is hard, it's misery from the start, it's dull and slow and painful. But I tell you, life is sweet. There's so much more to be grateful. Who do you believe? Who will you listen to? Who will it be? It's high time that you decide in your own mind. So my point here is we're always listening to somebody. We're always listening to something. So our power as a human being is our choice to what will we listen to? What will we meditate upon? And we meditate 24/7, by the way. So if we want more of an alignment with this energy, this dynamic, beautiful, creative, joyful energy, it requires a listening and humility. And then thirdly, we have to act. We have to act, move freely, and relate to this divine energy. So, this has been my kind of sticky point. I just jump, and then I'm like, wow, that was a mess. But we learn. And on one hand, if we move too soon, we do create issues. We're being too impetuous. We just jump. And for me, I keep trying to jump to move to other places just because I like exploring things. And it's not my time. My time is still here in Minnesota. And my time here will be done. Might be 5 years from now. Might be 10 years from now. But I can't my energy's here. My draw is here. My life energy is back in Minnesota. Doesn't mean I can't travel and do things, but this is just an example of where my energy is. On the other hand, if we refuse to move, and this is the really tough one, is if we refuse to move and it becomes obvious we should be moving because we're in pain, but we refuse because we're afraid to take that step and do that move, then life gets pretty tough, painful. And there's one of my favorite places up on Lake Superior is this ramshackle place called Tom's Burnt Down Cafe. And there's quotes all over the place. And one of the quotes says, if you're going to be stupid, you better be tough. And the corollary here is, if you're going to be willful and take that and insist on taking your branch out here and not listening to yourself, not listening to your energy, not listening to that inspiration, then life, it can get a little tough. All right, so and that's our choice. So I say, if in doubt, jump. I say, if in doubt, go for it. You'll learn something. You might fall flat on your face, but hey, that's okay. You learn something, and then you become fearless, and you don't take yourself very seriously. So an example of this was about 2 years ago. I was out in California, and I had a group of kids with diabetes. It's a type juvenile diabetes. So there's about 30 kids,
There's about 5 sailboats, 5 captains, and we were going to sail these kids from Santa Barbara over to the islands right there, not Catalina, but one of the other islands there. Anyway, so we, Santa Rosa, and we sail these kids over, and we get there, and we anchor, and it's really rough, and there's this nasty, rusty pier where we're supposed to dinghy over, and we're going to have dinner on the shore with this big barbecue, and we go over, and it's this, the waves are surging 8 feet up and down, and each kid is supposed to get on this ladder, and they're 9, 10 years old with little backpacks, and so one kid grabs onto the ladder, and then the boat goes out from under him, and he's just hanging on this rusty, nasty ladder, and we're like, all right, this is, very dangerous, so we can't do this. So the only other option, is to go to shore, a landing, like Christopher Columbus in the dinghy, So they need a volunteer, and of course, I'll do it. And before I go, I'm talking to one of the other captains, and he's a surfer, California guy. And he goes, now here's what you got to do. When you get in there, you got to count the set. And when you count the set and you get it right, then you got to go like hell. And I'm like, okay, count the set and then go like hell. Got it. So I'm paddling to shore. I've got these 3 kids and their counselor in my dinghy with me. And I'm about halfway to shore, and I'm like, I don't know what a set is. And I don't know how to count it. But I'm already there, and now I'm just riding up on the waves and up on the waves. And I'm like, well, this is as good a time as any, right? If in doubt, go, you'll learn something. So I went, paddle, paddle, paddle. And sure enough, the wave just picks us up and flings me and flings the counselor out of the dinghy. And the next thing I know, no exaggeration here, I'm face down in the gravel and sand, and the dinghy is on my back, and I'm drowning in 3 inches of water, right? And initially I was like terrified. I was like, I'm gonna drown. And then I thought, no, this is too ridiculous. You can't drown in 3 inches of water. So I'm safe. Something will help. And sure enough, I thought something moved, and I was able to get out. So I'm packed with sand, and I look over at the counselor, and she's just, a wreck. And I'm like, the kids, and I look back, and they're floating right in the water, and like a foot of water, and they're all still in the dinghy. The dinghy didn't flip, we just flipped out. And all 3 kids are in the dinghy, and their eyes are this big. And I thought, are they going to cry? And they, one of the kids says, that was so cool. Can we do that again? And I'm like, well, let Mr. Foley put his disc back in his back, and then we'll think about it. So the point of that is sometimes, I know there's a perfect timing to life. I don't seem to be able to figure that out all the time. So if in doubt, sometimes just go like hell. And even if you flip over, you learn something, and you gain something, and you have some experience, and at least you can tell a story afterwards. So even Goethe says the same thing. He says, whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. So if in doubt, just start. If you're going off in here and you're feeling some, an intuition go the other way, do it. Go and find out. And that's where life is going to. You're in that experience. You start dancing. You start a dance with this energy. And as you listen, the dance gets easier and easier and easier. And before you know it, you're flowing quite nicely with it. So it's just a matter of tuning into it. So people ask me, so what happens when you do listen to your inner guidance sooner than later? What happens when you do start following this all the time? Well, it's kind of like somebody asked Joseph Campbell, what happens when you follow your bliss? Some academic asked him, what happens when you follow your bliss? It's like, you get bliss. I'm like, all right, so listen to your inner self. That's going to bring you creative, dynamic, energy and love and joy. You follow that, you're going to get love and joy. So that's what I would say. So in closing, if we're willing to listen to the Divine Mother, which is this dynamic, creative energy that compels each of us forward in life, if we are willing to listen to that benevolent, creative energy which calls us to experience life in its fullness from moment to moment, we might just find just a titch of heaven, our heaven, here on earth. Thank you. What's that? I think it's meditation.
Offering, okay.
So, thank you, Mike, very much.
This is the point where